Wait, what? Not tomorrow.
When I retire, I'm gonna start a rock band.
Nice.
Okay.
And I'm gonna call it Angry White Men.
Yeah, that one over here. You meathead. I think it's our turn. Aha. It did not go over the air because I didn't have the microphone. That's probably a good thing, actually. Hi, everybody.
So.
I would think so. Hi, there's Dr. Dave. He does what Dr. Dave does. This is the preamble, by the way. Oh, there's Lizzie getting close.
I'm getting close.
Oh, the two sweeties. Right, little love. How we doing today? Everybody all right? Let me see. We get some volumes. Check.
Check.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. How loud do I have to be to pop my mic?
Pretty loud, actually. All you have to do is laugh, usually. That's about it.
That's pretty good.
Did you? Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us, all 5 of you. Wow, that's more than I expected. All right, so we're here to discuss the verdict of the jury. No, we're not. No, we're not. This has absolutely nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about your labs tonight, and lab work, and what you can learn from blood work.
And what you can't learn.
And what you cannot learn from blood work. No, wrong show. And so many things went darting through my head. All right, so how you guys doing today? How's everybody? Dr. Dave, you good?
I'm feeling fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good. Couldn't do any better.
You couldn't do any better?
Actually, I could, but not
I was
by
like,
much.
yeah, you probably could.
Happy 420, Linda Ball. Thanks for joining us. You probably could do better, yeah. So, there's so many things going on in my head right now, all at once. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I know, because I have to do an entire show tomorrow based on a verdict.
I'm
that's good.
so jealous of you.
Oh, what fun.
Based on, what do you think?
Does
Should
the
he
glove-
listen to me?
Well, I'm still confused if the glove doesn't fit, right?
If the glove
that's the
don't
wrong
fit,
case. I'm
you
sorry.
must have quit. All right, we're going to take a quick break here and start the shindig off. Share if you care. I think we're on all the right places.
Sure.
I think
sounds
so.
Good.
No, quit lying. I have the weirdest camera angles going right now. There. All right. We're always the passion of the Cooper. Subtle.
It's a train wreck.
Oh, I know what I'm doing here.
What do you
Hi everybody. I know exactly what I'm doing. Like something. There we go.
Okay, we are now connected to the mothership.
Is everything connected? What's up, Tony? What's up, Della? What's up, Linda? Everybody is on right now on our Facebook Live feed, and they're checking out the show because we do the live version for live for the social media, and then we play it back for the radio later. Because this is like partying without a net, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, and when we have Dr. Klein with us,
Then you really have to watch for the F words.
anything is possible. This guy can drop an F-bomb. Like, I mean, you're just like eating rice. Boom, I'm having dinner, ba-boom F. Wow. So,
Well,
today, yes, Dr. Klein.
Today we're going to talk about laboratory work.
Ooh, that
And
sounds
why?
exciting.
Well, it is exciting actually, because a lot of people rely on these kinds of things, and then they don't understand what they're looking at, and yet they will spend hours upon hours on Google trying to research each and every one of them to come up with some intelligent decision when it's not there to be had.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to talk about is what laboratory tests are about, what they're not about, how you can interpret them, and what the limits are really.
And what you're limited to, what
no.
you can't get out of them?
What you can expect and what you may not expect. So there are many different types of laboratory tests. Everything from radiology,
Oh, I know. I go to
X-ray,
any lab
ultrasound,
now, and I can just go in there and order whatever I want,
as
right?
long as you're willing to pay list price and not.
Oh, no, because I know if I get my cholesterol test
Well,
there
there you
for
go.
like $50, something like that, I'm sure I can read all that information.
Oh, yeah, and then
I
you'll-
don't even need you.
And you'll know exactly what to do about it.
I don't
too.
even need
'Cause
you.
that's on Google. You know?
Well.
So it's just the way these things work, and people think that they can watch a YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and go ahead and change Oh, I don't know. Let's say the drain in your bathtub.
Yeah,
that's
I
a
fast
good
forward.
one.
I can do that fast forward. Well, that looks easy.
No, I don't need a plumber. That's $300. Oh, okay. And then by the time you're replacing the plaster downstairs,
Right, the hole in the wall, the leak in the floor.
Yeah, it becomes a big issue, and the black mold that comes in, and then you find out that your insurance doesn't cover it because you were an idiot and didn't bring in a contractor to do it properly.
Yeah.
And such as it is with lab tests. So you can go ahead and order whatever you want, and you can do that now. You don't need a doctor, don't need a nurse practitioner. You just have to have a checkbook.
Tony wants you to know black labs matter.
Black labs matter. Why? He's not. That's not original. There.
Oh, really?
we were laughing about
Yeah,
that several
uh,
months ago.
Maybe even a year or so. He's the comedian in the house. All right, Tony, go back to work.
Yeah. So so what do we do? So we're looking at trying to sort through a diagnosis. So why do you go ahead and do any lab test at all, as opposed to any lab test now?
Oh, funny.
Why any at all? And the answer is to answer a question, and they're not necessarily diagnostic. Well, let's find out what's wrong by running the studies. It doesn't work that way. The best lab analysis is to confirm a suspicion. So if you think something's there, then you go turn over that rock. Because otherwise you're going to be spending a fortune on things without being able to figure out what's wrong because you don't know what you're looking for. So no lab test is appropriate.
Okay.
None of them is acceptable unless you are looking for something or some class of diseases or something needs to be ruled out.
Okay, so phlebotomy aside. No, just kidding. Actually, phlebotomy.
Yeah, phlebotomy. That's
Phlebotomy, very
drawing blood,
important.
sure.
Okay, so the blood, though, very important. Tells us a lot
It's
of
a
things.
biopsy. So what you're looking at is you're looking at the fluid one of the fluids that floats around in your body that keeps these cells balanced. It washes away waste. It provides nutrients. It does a bunch of different things. But most importantly, it maintains balance, something called homeostasis. So if you can imagine how much fun it is keeping a saltwater aquarium in balance. And anybody out there that's ever done this
I've
realize
done
it
it.
is not easy
at
to do.
all.
It takes many
the
failures,
guy.
to do this. Your fish all die because you know something? One chemical or another just gets a little out of balance.
Oops.
Well, we are a whole lot more delicate than that saltwater fish tank. And it doesn't take very much to get sick. So what the body does is it maintains certain chemicals, certain elements, really, anions and cations, hormones and whatnot, within certain ranges. And the ranges are really where the fun comes in. So let's say you're concerned about electrolytes. So that'd be sodium, potassium, chloride, CO2. Okay, for the most part. There are more, magnesium, manganese, and a bunch of others. But really those four are the main ones. And if you didn't understand the nature of measurement, the chemistry of measurement, and the mathematics of measurement, you'd go, well, gee, they drew my blood 3 times, and they came up with 3 different sodium levels. And if you understand how this operates, you'd know that that's perfectly acceptable in spite of the fact it came out of the same tube. One tube of blood, you'll end up with 3 different results. That's something called the standard error of the estimate.
Okay.
And it's a measurement of what the measurement is able to do. So when you do a poll, well, we're going to go ahead and see how many people approve or are interested in gun control. That's assuming that you're actually asking the question in an objective manner, which is a science in and of itself. It'll be 43% plus or minus 4%. That plus or minus is actually the standard
That's
error of the estimate.
4% is pretty big, though,
Not
isn't
necessarily, no. If you look at polling numbers, that's actually about right.
it? Oh, okay.
But when you're looking at biological systems, it might be as much as 10%, sometimes 15%. Hormone levels is plus or minus 15%. When you're looking at the electrolytes, it may be plus or minus 4%. Because one, the machinery has a limit, has certain imprecisions attached to it. So you go ahead and run it, or you can measure it, and you're going to end up with 3 or 4 different measurements. So if I gave you, were I to give you a tape measure and say, I would like you to measure the length of Lizzie's arm, write it down. Now, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to hand you a tape measure and ask you to measure Libby's arm. Write it down. So Lizzie, what's the number? Boom. It's different than the first one.
She done growed.
Okay, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to give it to Linda to measure Lizzie's arm, and it'll be different. So these are
that Spanish.
there you go.
math.
So what happens is that you're using the same tape measure, 3 different observers, 1 arm, and you're going to end up with 3 different numbers. Same thing happens when you go stand on the scale in the morning. You stand on the scale, you see a number. You step off, take a deep breath, pause for a moment, step back on. The number will be slightly different.
One and
Why?
done.
Right.
No, because that's the nature of measurement. So when you're looking at blood work, when you're comparing this hematocrit to the one that was done 6 months ago. Well, it's different. Of course it's different. It's going to be different if we waited 5 minutes. So these things do change, but they're not necessarily the same. So when you're looking at changes, you have to understand ranges and what the standard error of the estimate is. So again, let's take Lizzie as an example. So Lizzie, we're going to stand her up and we're going to measure your height. Well, it's
that's
5'3"
not
or
really.
something like that. It'll be about 5'3".
Oh wow, I like
Ooh, you
that.
should
I'll
really
take
get some
that
height.
Look,
one.
I know how I
Okay.
know how to get hit if I estimate too short. But then
It's not weight.
let's say 2 years later, she comes back and she's 5'1".
It happens.
Uh-oh.
Okay, well,
Osteoporosis.
but that's a disease state. But both measurements are accurate and both are within normal limits.
Okay.
So if you look at things with ranges alone, out of context, you're going to miss most bits of pathology until they become a disaster. You would have to be 4'6" before it would be abnormal.
Oh, so that's when you need to worry.
You with me? No, you
That's
have
a
to. You
big
have to.
dive.
You have to worry when the data suggests that there's a problem. So it's not a matter of being normal or abnormal. It's a matter of interpreting things within context. So it's a normal hematocrit. That's how much the percentage of volume of red cells within a unit of blood. Wow. So it's measured in percent. So for men, it might be anywhere from 38 to 48% is pretty typical. But it could be a little lower.
So
it could
are
be
you
a little higher.
So are you suggesting like if you have test A done that they should test it 3 times and then you take the average from
No,
that?
not
or
at all.
What?
No, that would be cost prohibitive for the most part.
Okay.
But you have to look at these things and take them within context. So if somebody comes in and they're a smoker, you're going to expect that hematocrit to be on the high side because smoking makes the crit go up.
Okay.
So a smoker comes in and their crit's 34. That's a normal crit, 35 normal, but it's not for smoker. So you have to be able to actually interpret the data in the context in which it's provided. So when you go to the doctor's office, this is what's supposed to happen. Now, does it happen all the time? You got to be kidding me. Most of the time nobody's paying any attention to you because, after all, finding somebody that really cares is sometimes a challenge.
Yeah.
Let's look at something like a urinary tract infection. So that's a blood test. It's a urine test. It might be a molecular genetics test. It depends on what you're looking for. We'll do a white count if we think that you might be infected, but we will typically do a dip and maybe a molecular genetics. And we will be right back.
All right, check this out. So blood work is like your bowling average.
Well, that's one way to look at it.
Okay, right.
Blew my mind.
Yeah, I know. Wow. When we come back, we're going to talk more about labs and how to figure them out and what blood work will tell you. It's Connections, Relationship Radio with a twist.
Connections is Relationship Radio.
I think I just said that. I'm pretty sure I just said that. Connections is Relationship Radio.
With a twist.
Yeah, with a twist. Wow.
Good
Well,
job.
we're back because we twisted.
Yeah, we sure did. I twisted around a little bit in the chair, and now we're back. Melissa Fox, along with hashtag Lizzie Said What, and Dr. David Klein, Stages of Life Medical Institute, talking about blood work and labs and what they tell you. And for the most part, we talked about the fact that the law of averages means that,
Well, but everything has to be taken in context. Music, a note, an instrument, taken in context. It may be a marvelous note for one thing, but it may be absolutely wrong for something else. So we'll take testosterone. Okay, why do I care about testosterone? Because it's very important to men, and coincidentally, it's very important to women.
Ooh.
But the levels tend to be different between men and women, and they tend to change with age. And then comes the fun part. It changes with the time of day.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say that we want to know what your testosterone level's doing. When do you think it's the highest in the day? Between 3 and 6 in the morning. So you can take the same person and draw their testosterone 12 times a day and end up with 12 very different numbers. Which one's the correct number?
The one between 3 and 6 in the morning?
That's where it's the highest. Where's it the lowest?
3 and 6 in the afternoon.
10, 11 at night.
Damn, I tried.
Well, it was close.
I wasn't even anywhere near
good
that.
try.
It was a
Good
good
try.
try. Then.
So this is important. So when you look at those particular values, you've got to know what time of day the blood was drawn. Not when it was run, but when it was drawn.
That's crazy.
It's wild. Well,
Well,
what
they
about
put it
something?
on there, temperature, the whole
right.
deal.
Progesterone, another interesting one. So with men, it tends to be flat. It tends to run between, a healthy man tends between 1 and 2 picograms per deciliter. But with women, it changes with their menstrual cycle. So it'll peak at 2 times a month and it drops off other times. Estrogen does very much the same thing. Cortisol peaks around 3 o'clock in the morning. It's at trough. That's the lowest point, about 4 p.m. So each of these things has to be interpreted in its own way. And so when you're looking at these things, I like to draw all the labs at one time. That way I can use one time perspective in order to interpret them. Otherwise, you're sitting back spending all day long looking at individual panels and what time they were drawn, and I don't have time for that nonsense.
No.
I can do the job a whole lot faster if it's all done at one time, and then I can get through things in just a few moments. So the labs have to be taken in context. When we're looking at things like urinary tract infections, well, this is where it gets to be a laboratory problem as opposed to a doctor problem or a patient problem. So, okay, on a daily basis, I see about 60 people in my practice. I'll see them either individually or I'll see them following one of the PAs or nurse practitioners. And somebody comes in with a urinary tract every fifth patient.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Every
A UTI every fifth
Is there
every-
something in your seats that need?
No.
Every
Is
fifth
it all
patient,
old people that are
no,
dirty?
asymptomatic. Not at all. It's not a matter of being dirty. It's a matter of
I don't know. I'm trying to find out.
Well, what happens is that with women, okay, let's just say
he's like, "Dadgummit, just let me answer this."
They're
the
not dirty.
the lower gastrointestinal tract, which is rather filthy, is close
Told you it was
to
dirt.
the urinary tract in females, which is supposed to be kept clean.
Is that like the taint?
Yeah, there you go. There's a distance there that's not that far. With men, it's a whole lot easier to keep them separate,
Wipe the
unless
right way.
unless they engage in certain types of activities,
Ow.
which would introduce fecal material into their genitalia. So what happens? One person in 5 will walk through the door with a urinary tract infection. If you're in a nursing home facility, it's twice that percentage.
Oh, I'll bet.
Well, most of the people that have this don't even know they're sick. And in fact, after we figure out that they are sick, they go back and go, well, maybe that explains why it burns a little bit
Oh,
when I
come
pee.
on.
You think I'm kidding. That was today.
Shut up.
Okay, well, it's funny you should say that because I didn't really think anything of it because it burns all the time. Okay,
Whoa, hold on a second.
being a doctor sometimes not as easy as
Thankfully,
it is on television.
HIPAA laws do not allow us to totally shame this person, but we can laugh vicariously
Well,
through the doctor.
actually, I laugh at. I enjoy my life.
Seriously?
So yes, you
guy-
have got to be. You have got to be kidding me.
Burning
It's not,
when you pee for how long? Forever? Oh, I
yeah,
just
maybe. Well, I
that's
didn't think it was urinary
normal.
tract. I wasn't running a fever, and it didn't turn green or yellow
green.
or
Well, if it
red.
drops off in your hand, then there's a problem.
Well, that is a big problem. So, urinary tract infection. So, how do you determine whether somebody has a UTI, right? Urinary tract infection, UTI, same thing. So, you go into the doctor's office and they pull out this little canister of these little dipsticks and they drop the dipstick into the urine and then hold it up to the bottle and try to compare colors. Now, my wife is an interior designer. She specializes in color selection. So if you want to have some fun, talk to her about the color white or the color brown or the color gray, and she will go on and on and on. She'll go on and on about a lot of things. But color selection is sometimes one of the hardest things to do in designing an interior.
Sure.
All right, and people don't pay any attention to it. They ask the painter what color it should be, and then boom, and they wonder why the room looks like hell. When you're trying to figure out whether somebody has a UTI and you're relying on a color on the back of a chart. Okay, you've got a problem.
So
okay?
that's okay,
So
I have
you
a
miss a lot
question.
of these. Yes.
Okay, so I have a question, and I'm not trying to be gross or anything.
Oh,
But
okay.
as a female, if you're on your monthly cycle, then that's where that would be completely wrong.
Of
like
course.
you wouldn't want to go by the color, but then
There might be a little tinge of red in there, yes.
But here's my question, because you're testing to see if there's any blood in the urine, and then if it's that time of month and you've dribbled in that your little canister, how do you determine the difference?
Well, it's hard to do that, but most women are able to kind of pee one way and dribble the other. So there's a kind
Oh,
of
I'm
a-
Not me.
I'm
I
not
was
that clever.
flooding.
Hell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
so-
why I
yeah,
lost my
so-
uterus.
So that's the TMI, as they say locally. But
You're a
okay,
doctor.
so a little bit of but the 50,000 people listening in may not be.
Oh, like I'm
So-
the only person.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway.
All right. So a little bit of blood in there could mean that you're on your menstrual cycle, and we ask that.
Okay. Okay.
However, it could also mean that you have a kidney stone cooking, or that you have cystitis, or that you have something more serious going on. But when you're relying on the little color chart, you're going to miss things most of the time. So we bought 2 of these $6,000 meters that actually take the technicians out of it.
Oh.
You go ahead and you drop it in there, and it gives you a much more objective read of what's going on. So let's say now that it shows us that you have 1+ or 2+ white cells in your urine. You're not going to get that from your period, I can promise you.
Okay.
So, but what it does mean is that you have some kind of infection going on. So now we're going to go send it to the big box lab,
Oh.
And so what do? You send it out for culture and sensitivity. Now that's an 80-year-old technology.
Wait a minute. I'm going to pick it up in my little car. I'm going to drive around for 6 or 7 hours and let it get nice and warm and
Right.
change the temperature.
Well, actually too hot.
Yeah.
Okay, is the problem. Because
Then I'm going to drop it off, but I might mix it around a little bit,
Yeah.
throw it to the guy at Quest,
that's called sample handling error.
Yes.
But
that's
let's assume for a moment that didn't happen, and the doctor's going to do their own culture and sensitivity.
You
in
mean
the
like at
office.
Stages of Life Medical Institute?
Very much like so.
Okay.
So instead of it traveling, it goes in, but it's going to take 3 to 5 days to get the thing to grow out. Mm-hmm. That's assuming it's a rapidly growing bacterium. But now, you look at it and you find out that there's 2 or more bacteria in there. It just went out to the big box, whose name I will not dignify. And they come back and say, well, we can't read it because it's contaminated sample because there's more than one bacterium. And that's half the time. Half the time you get it back that says contaminated sample. You can do this thing through a catheter, and if there's more than one bacterium, it'll come back contaminated sample. That's an insult to the nurses that actually do the catheterization and to the rest of the people involved. About 3/4 of the time, we're finding that there's more than one bacterium in the urine, and the way we find it isn't by growing it out. We do it by using molecular genetics or DNA testing. So instead of sitting back and relying on an 80-year-old technology to grow it against little antibiotic discs, which are not all that accurate anyway, to look for what's called the MIC, which is the concentration it takes to kill the thing of the bacteria, what we do is we take it and pop it on our PCR, and what does it do? It tells you what the bacteria are.
I'm sorry, you said
Really?
MIC, and immediately I was off on the
MIC.
Mickey side.
That is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
So
that is actually really cool.
It's very, very cool. And so we were one of the first labs in the country, and we were the first in the doctor's office to be able to do this. So why is that important? Because if you can't speciate, that's to determine precisely what the bacterium is, you really can't do squat with the antibiotics. And that's why people end up with recurrent urinary tract infections.
We're
Now, there are other
learning.
reasons, which we can get into, but it's really not the main reason for the discussion.
No, we're talking about blood work and labs and what they will tell you and how we can detect the problems before they cause a larger issue. That's coming up next. You are listening to Connections. Dr. David Klein from Stages of Life Medical Institute is in the house. It's Melissa Fox, hashtag Lizzie Said What, and Connections. Relationship radio with a twist.
Are you ready, all you fans out there land? It's time for the biggest, baddest party in the world. So get on up, turn it up a notch, and get ready to boogie, baby.
Welcome back to Connections. Got Dr. David Klein in the house. Blood work can tell you many, many things, detecting problems before they cause larger issues. So there are things that we need to know, though, like sleep habits, how many REM cycles, all these wonderful things. So talk to us about this.
All right. So again, one of the lab tests that we do routinely for individuals is we'll do growth hormone levels. Okay, it's one of these sorts of tests that you wouldn't necessarily think is important for somebody that's not a bodybuilder or a growing teenager or a young child. Mm-hmm. But when you go through REM sleep, your body kicks out, it secretes a certain amount of growth hormone that will show up in the bloodstream. And so one of the things that you'll find is that you can determine whether people are sleeping adequately or inadequately by looking at their growth hormone levels. So every 90 days for my patients Medicare patients mostly, most of my patients are Medicare patients, we will do growth hormone levels. And I can tell you, you're sleeping or you're not sleeping, or you're sleeping well, or something's wrong. Or individuals that come in and go, well, I sleep just fine because I take an Ambien. And what I'll tell you is that's why you're waking up feeling miserable, because you're not hitting REM sleep. The sleep medications that we typically use, benzodiazepines and/or Ambien and similar ones, they will knock you into a point where you can't remember that you didn't sleep, but you're not actually sleeping. Sleeping is not an inactive
So you're
process.
just basically getting knocked out unconscious,
Yeah,
so
but
your
it's
body
not
isn't
sleep.
doing what it needs to do because it's not in that sleep mode.
Look at your computer. Okay, there's a big difference between defragging the hard drive and turning the whole machine off. When
Well,
you're
yeah.
sleeping, you're defragging your brain.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's an active process. It doesn't go to sleep. It doesn't turn off. It's actually doing different work. So when you change it chemically so that you don't remember, it doesn't mean that you actually slept.
Wow.
So these are the sorts of things that the labs will tell you if you choose to look for them.
Liz is trying not
But-
to make eye contact.
I know, I got
Did
it.
you see that?
Oh, I haven't. Well, what about things like, what about prolactin levels?
What are prolactin levels?
Prolactin.
Oh,
Proactive is a little different. That's a product. But
Oh.
prolactin's a hormone. So, well, what do you care about prolactin if you're not a female? Okay, well, I'll tell you. So men have issues often enough with erectile dysfunction and libido.
Not possible. Never heard of
One,
such a thing.
elevations in
Five different ED ads running every hour. Who you care?
elevations in prolactin. Okay, elevations in prolactin can cause men's libido to go to hell in a handbasket.
dear.
So what do? There are things that you can do to alter prolactin levels to make men a little bit more, let's just say, suggestible or acceptable. Get performance where it needs to go.
Oh.
So what might that take? Something called bromocriptine is where I typically go with it. And that also treats the diabetes that often comes along with that.
I'll say sleep habits. All right. Understanding probably depression symptoms. These are all things that have to go along with the blood work when you're looking
Exactly.
at them. Weight, diabetic issues, obvious diet problems. Now is another caption you got here.
Yes.
Diet-induced diabetes.
Diet-induced diabetes. So what's that all about? Well, I didn't get diabetes until I gained all this weight, and that's when I became diabetic. Nonsense. Okay, it usually diabetes precedes the weight gain by about 15 years, sometimes more. What happens is the insulin level climbs first. It goes up. It'll go up much higher than it should, which puts fat on your belly. And then eventually the system breaks and the blood sugar and A1C go up. When the A1C and the sugar go up, the doctor says, you have diabetes, instead of saying, you've had diabetes for 15 years. So you only got half of the story because you didn't pay for the rest of it, apparently. So what do? You check your insulin levels while you're checking your sugar, your glucose, your A1C. So there's three things you need: A1C, sugar, glucose, and insulin. So how many people listening in actually have had their insulin levels checked? Any?
I might have.
Any? I know you have because I checked it. But very rarely is it done. You go to the VA, they can't even do it. They're not set up for it. So we do it at stages for about $15. It's not an expensive test.
So the insulin to glucose ratio?
Insulin to glucose ratio tells you whether or not you have insulin resistance.
Okay.
So if you get all three at one time, you're going to know whether you have intermittent hyperglycemia, so the A1C goes up. The blood sugar to insulin ratio will tell you whether or not you have insulin resistance. Very important if you're trying to lose weight.
Okay.
Because if you're insulin resistant, the weight will not come off unless you lower the insulin.
Now, do you have to fast to have the best results?
Brilliant question, Lizzie girl. Okay, it depends. A lot of physicians prefer to have things done fasting. However, it's impractical. One, you're only fasting for an hour a day. So that means all the labs will be drawn between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning. It's not likely to ever happen. The second thing is just like your car. If you want to know what's happening with your car, you don't analyze it when the engine's cold.
Right.
You wait until it's at temperature. So with people, that usually means after you're eating, going about your business, and I would much rather do it non-fasting. On the other hand, if you're looking at particle size for cholesterol, then it's important. So particle size cholesterol, yes. But for most everything else, I couldn't care whether you ate or not.
Yeah, see, because I've noticed that, like, whenever my dad's coming to see you, and you guys, you've tested him for that, but it's, you, not once did y'all go, hey, make sure he doesn't eat prior to.
Because I don't, I'd rather that he eat.
Yeah.
But I also don't care so much.
Me
I don't,
too.
I don't care so much about particle size.
Right.
The main reason for that is that was a big deal about 10 years ago. Well, we need to know what the particle size is because X, Y, and Z particle size, ... And then there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter. So if I get your cholesterol under 190, you really think I care about your particle size? The answer is no, because it doesn't make any difference. But I do care about your triglycerides. So what are triglycerides and why should
Yeah, I
you
was gonna say,
care?
what about the triglycerides?
Yeah, triglycerides are actually more interesting. So elevations in triglycerides will cause more damage to the cardiovascular system than the cholesterol will. And yet we focus on the wrong thing, which is not an uncommon event. So when your triglycerides are elevated, what causes it? Why did the triglycerides go up? Well, sometimes it's genetic, but that's not that common. But most typically, Triglycerides go up because of diet. Usually it's cheese and nuts,
Nuts
believe it or
and
not.
cheese.
Nuts and cheese will make your triglycerides go up. So it's easy to fix that.
Fats, of course.
You stop it.
And
okay,
alcohol.
and alcohol. But insulin goes up.
She's like,
Yeah. So when insulin goes up, triglycerides go up.
Okay, but all nuts are bad. So like almonds are bad?
No, okay, all nuts are not bad.
moderation.
Moderation. So
Moderation.
what's a moderate dosage of dosage? What's a moderate intake of nuts?
A handful.
No.
No.
Okay,
Less than
like
that.
like 6 to 9 walnuts.
I just said 8.
A day?
Almonds?
A day? 6 to 9 almonds a day? And if you eat the almonds, you don't eat the
You know
walnuts?
the little cups that I have? The little 2-ounce cup?
That's it.
About 2 ounces.
Once
I've been
a
eating too
day.
many.
Yeah, and then that will not only elevate your triglycerides, but it'll put weight on you too.
And of course, peanuts are not
No, that's bad.
nuts.
And
Yeah.
soy is bad too.
Yeah,
Right,
and they
same
will-
ballpark.
Okay, so what about cholesterol? Well, we need to lower your cholesterol, so
Like
we're going to give you
garbanzo
a
beans.
statin.
Garbanzo beans,
beans, no good. But we're going to give you a statin. What does a statin do? Well, it lowers cholesterol. What else does it do?
It makes your joints ache and
And the nerves go to hell in a handbasket. But why? Okay, why do you want to take a statin? Well, because it lowers the cholesterol. Why were you given cholesterol to begin with? And what's a good healthy cholesterol and what's an unhealthy cholesterol? Cholesterol is the precursor. It's the original chemical that the body converts into pregnenolone, which is called the memory hormone. So you have cognitive problems, and we measure your pregnenolone. It's low. You're taking a statin. Your doctor
That's what it
your
is.
doctor gave you dementia. How do
See,
you like
look at that. Very
Good.
nice. Way to go,
Congratulations.
Doc.
Good.
Memory problems.
Pat on the back for that one.
Nice.
Nicely done. So we're going to cost your nerves, your memory, your heart, and your brain with one medicine. So, but why did the cholesterol go up to begin with? Because it didn't convert from cholesterol into pregnenolone. That's an enzymatic reaction that can be inhibited by certain things in the environment, in your diet, and medications. But when cholesterol goes up, it's usually in response to something going bad in the liver. Now, what could this be? And what's the most common thing that goes bad in the liver that will make cholesterol go up? And you're going to think alcohol, and it will contribute to it. But it's hypothyroidism.
Oh no, the thyroid, that
So
pesky
bringing
brain.
that up.
thyroid function goes down, cholesterol goes up.
What?
So you can lower somebody's cholesterol by simply adequately treating their thyroid.
I'd like to punch you.
So if you have thyroid nodules, do you have thyroid nodules? And if the answer is yes and you have elevated cholesterol, you're being undertreated for thyroid disease.
Should
Sounds-
you
That
ask?
is a fact.
Good, good.
So
Nodules.
guess what? Okay, they can give you statins and make you sicker that way too, but the real issue is not paying so much attention to the thyroid numbers, but to actually treat the patient. So coincidentally, your temperature is also low, and you never run a fever, and you're going to wonder, well, gee, why can't they figure out that that's my thyroid? The answer is because most doctors or other health care providers don't understand what thyroid does and how it works.
Oh, I see. This is making so much sense.
It is so much fun, and all of this is substantiated by laboratory work.
Right, the blood work, the
So, gee,
lab
Dr.
work.
Jones, what's euthyroid sick? Oh, well, that's when the thyroid numbers are all normal, but the patient has hypothyroidism.
Then you're not
Okay, so
ripping
how
up
do you
the
prove
right
that?
numbers.
Right? Yeah, look at their temperature. Look at their cholesterol, which, by the way, is the way we used to look at thyroid function before we had TSH.
Wow.
That's my cue to shut up.
When we come back, we would be remiss did we not talk about osteoporosis and of course the libido,
On
and
the way
these
back.
are all detecting indicators and such, leading towards possible larger issues that you can actually stop or at least reverse. More coming up on Connections with Dr. David Klein.
You're listening to Connections Relationship Radio.
Well, the strange thing is, people with that much talent rarely amount to anything.
Yep. All right, let's keep this train wreck moving.
Welcome back to Connections. Dr. David Klein is with us from Stages of Life Medical Institute. This isn't new. This isn't groundbreaking. This is putting it all together and packaging it in an easy and palatable way so that you understand that blood work, that lab work is very, very important, but more importantly is the guy that understands how to interpret the blood work and the lab work.
It's intel.
Yeah.
It's all intel. You know, so in a previous life, I worked for the Air Force and would sometimes spend time in dark rooms looking at satellite recon photos.
It happens.
Okay, it happens. You know, that was 12. It was actually 7 years Air Force and 5 Navy, or is it 5
And it was
Air Force, 7
another
Navy?
lifetime ago.
Yeah. And it was funny because different people got to look at the same photographs and picked up different things.
Sure.
Because that was their field of expertise. We had people that were nuclear weapons experts, and they could pick out what they had to there. Me, I was a chemical weapons type guy, so I could see what I needed to see,
Yeah,
which is
Mr.
why.
mustard gas. Mm.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing,
Oops.
And so,
No, was that
actually,
what that
was well, yeah, it can happen. There was some issue with that in Iraq. I was, in any event, never to go back.
What?
So, with lab work, these things are interpreted in context. So you need to know something about the person that the blood or urine or bone
What?
marrow
No
or
blind
whatever.
testing?
You can do blind testing. I do blind testing all the time.
Okay.
Okay, but it's only useful in very limited circumstances.
Right.
So, I guess my laboratory's tested 35 or 40,000 patients for COVID. Okay, so we do the PCRs. We do them
right.
very, very rapidly, and you're either positive or negative on the PCR. But it doesn't tell me anything as to whether you had it in the past.
Right.
You could have had COVID 3 weeks ago and be PCR negative.
So it's like
right
a
now.
picture.
It's
Just a snapshot
It gives you one
right then.
piece of information at one brief period of time.
Hmm.
So if we're doing an antigen study, okay, and it may be negative, but you may be infectious. So you don't know necessarily what you're doing. So what we do for our testing for, let's say, VIPs, which we do a lot. So we fly around all over the country doing board meetings. We send a technician with a machine. We'll do antigens as well as PCRs on board airplanes. That's an expensive way to do it, but we do it. We just send some people out for two
you
big
can
companies in
afford
Jacksonville. Well, they do, and they pay us well for it. But in context, so why would you do an antigen study and a PCR together? And the reason is simple, because the antigen is going to tell you whether or not you're grossly infectious, and the other one may tell you that you could be in the meeting but not necessarily sit right next to me.
Yeah. You over there.
More so is that the PCR takes longer. PCR is going to take some hours to run. At some labs in this country, it may take 5 days to 3 weeks. We do them quickly, but they're not done instantaneously. The antigen we do in 12 minutes. The PCR may take 4 to 6 hours if you have the machine right there. So that's just the way these things go. So everything is taken in context. So we're going to look at osteoporosis.
Okay.
So how do you do a bone study? How do you do blood work looking for osteoporosis or things that may suggest that you have it or that you have a disease process that would result in osteoporosis?
I thought you had to do a scan.
A scan is helpful
Well,
to
that
measure.
helps. But what about looking at, say, those 3 things that you're always tossing out there: the estrogen,
Yes.
the progesterone, and the testosterone?
The
Wouldn't that help you a little bit?
gonadotropins, they tell you why you may have osteoporosis.
Okay.
So if your estrogen's too low, testosterone's too low, that will lead to osteoporosis. But we do a lab study called bone-specific alkaline phosphatase, or OSTASE. And so when OSTASE goes up, something is happening in your bone that is causing it to break down. And that could be metastatic prostate cancer. It could be just garden variety osteoporosis. It could be Paget's disease. It could be parathyroid adenoma. It could be a lot of different things. But these are the sorts of disorders that result in rapid degradation of bone. We do it as a routine lab test.
Oh.
OSTASE. Okay, why would you want to do that? Because it's kind of a good idea to know what the heck is going on, don't you think? What about liver enzymes? Do we all check out liver enzymes? We do a CBC, a BMP, and okay, so you're going to go ahead and do lipid panels and hepatic panels. So, your liver transaminases. This is what the doctor's looking at, supposed to be looking at. Well, they're slightly elevated, so we're going to do a hepatitis panel on you. So they're going to spend $200 of your money because some yahoo did something very basic. A basic error results in hepatitis being diagnosed or misdiagnosed or being suspected. It's called shaking the tube. When you go to get your blood work, you're going to love this one. You get this. The technician takes the blood, and what do? They shake the thing before they set it down, which is something that you don't shake it like you shake your genitalia. You do not do this.
Why would you shake it anyway?
Because there's no
Some sort of
reason why they
force, a
should.
Weird habit. I've
It
seen
is. It happens all the time.
So
There's
if you
a
see them
tiny.
do it, can you slap it out of their hands?
No,
Yeah.
actually, what I have my patients do is I tell them if you're going to go to either of these two major multi-billion-dollar companies, you tell the technician to not shake the tube. Do not shake it. You set it down gently.
No shake.
Now, if you have a tube that has a little bit of anticoagulant in it, you know what
Okay.
you do? You tilt it one way and you tilt it the other, and then gently set it down. Because if you want to give somebody the appearance of hepatitis, you take that tube and shake it 3 or 4 times. Whack, 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 set it down, and now you've just set that patient up for more lab work and another office visit. Do you get it? Yeah, that's half the fun. Or if it sits in the back of a truck on its way to Tampa. Okay, yeah, we're going to leave this blood in that box outside the doctor's office. Inside that box, it gets to be 140 degrees. And I'll tell you what,
do that.
they still do it.
It's not
140
funny.
degrees. Well, what do you think that's going to do to the blood? What
did
do you
that
think
for
it
a
would?
living.
What do you think it's going to do if that were milk, beer, or wine? It would kill it. So
Yeah.
your blood is sitting in somebody's bakery, okay, before it goes to Tampa, where it gets run and it comes back in a cup.
Fun part is those boxes often are right in the dead afternoon sun.
Right.
too.
They're all in the afternoon sun. It's nuts.
That's true.
The whole world has gone completely mad.
put it in a metal
so
box.
I
That
got
makes
into the
sense.
laboratory business. Okay, I put together a multi-million-dollar lab in my office because I got tired of getting lousy results. When you send that stuff into the back of somebody's truck outside of you're going to end up with bad results. And sadly, bad results make for bad decisions. And therein lies the difficulty. So we do most of our own lab work in-house. There's one lab that we send out because I don't feel like spending $90,000 on an extra head for my mass spectrometer. I have my own mass spectrometer. Why? Because it's really cool.
It is pretty cool.
It's cool.
All right, so we have like
You know?
a minute and a half to kind of put a capsule on everything that we've said here.
Okay. In summary, in total, just to wrap it all up. 1, you look for something and test for that something. You have to know what rock you're flipping over in order to test for it.
Okay.
Number 2, the lab test is not taken by itself. It's got to be taken in context. Third thing is when you compare labs, you need to understand that they change as day, season, and month goes on. And fourth is that you have something called the standard error of the estimate, which is the error rate. So what is the likelihood? What's the 95% probability that the number's actually within a particular range? So a blood study might be 100 plus or minus 6. That means it's 94 to 106, right? In that range. Mm-hmm. Or 96 to 104, whatever it happens to be. That's pretty much the way that it has to go. And so when you compare them, you have to compare them in context. Well, last week it was 98, and now it's 101. Ma'am, it's the same number. It is exactly the same. So ranges are important, but they're not absolute.
Okay.
A lab study may go outside a range, but there may be another explanation for it, like handling of the sample. There may be more than one disease type that causes this. So what do we do at Stages of Life? We do this for a living. We have our own laboratory right there. We're happy to treat you because I love doing what I do.
Stages of Life, medicalinstitute.com for more information. You can start the old patient process there as well. If
That's
you'd like
the best
become
place
a
to
new
start
patient.
it. Yeah, go to stagesoflifemedicalinstitute.com, fill out the new contact, and we will call you. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, it really is. Lizzie?
Good night. I learned a lot.
Yeah, we actually did learn a lot today. And again, you can always catch the replay of the show or the podcast. Dr. Davis saying
Adios.
adios. Yeah, we'll see you all next time. Any suggestions about topics or stuff that you want us to converse about, please just go ahead and hit us up, won't you? Sure.
We'll be happy to do it.
All right, then. Say goodbye.
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 Love you, man.
Laughing time is over.
There you have it, boys. Case closed.
You've been listening to Connections. Find tonight's show and replays of our past shows on ConnectionsShow.com.
Okay, we